Today, I have a special guest coming to us from Canada. Her name is Nelia Hutt. She is the CEO of Travel Live Give. She is also the host of the Giving Starts, not the Giving, Giving Starts With You podcast, which I've had the honor of being a guest on. So if you haven't checked out that episode, please do. I'll pop it in the show notes. And she's also the founder of the Ukulele Project. She's an author of Giving My Heart Room to Breathe. And she's just an amazing superhuman that I'm so fortunate to. I just feel blessed to having known you, Nelia. So please, thank you. Thank you for being here today and welcome to the show.
Ria, what can I say? Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And thanks for coming on the show because you were one of my most favorite interviews. And I feel like we hit it off right from the beginning. You touched my heartstrings. So I appreciate that genuine part of you. So thank you for inviting me today.
It's my pleasure. I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while now, but I wanted to make sure that I had finished reading your beautiful book that you've just released recently. And just wow. But before we go into your book, actually, there's a theme here that I think really pronounces itself. If you haven't already cottoned on, she likes giving. There's a giving theme here. And even Ukulele Project. So, I mean, tell us where are the roots of this giving that comes from you?
Yeah, so as you probably read in my story, but to make a long story short, I think it was the day my father passed away. I decided that day that I was going to live my life differently and I didn't want to just be taking up space. And I saw how quick things were in the end and how much it mattered in the scheme of life, you know. And my son, when he was 6, he started his own project. It's called Evan's Loot Bags for the Homeless and kind of came out of nowhere. I thought it was his way of not going to sleep on time, you know. He'd come in and he says, Mom, I wanted, you know, do homeless people have loot bags? And here in Canada, loot bags are little gift bags that guests receive when they go to a party, like if you're a child.
Okay.
So I said, no, I don't think they really get invited to, you know, to birthday parties very much. And he says, well, tomorrow morning we're going to get up early and we're going to go and give them something. We're going to go and buy a gift. And I'm like, okay, go to bed. You know, you're like, it's past your bedtime. We'll talk about this tomorrow, you know? Mm-hmm. And first thing the next day, you know, being Canada, it was close to Christmas and there was snow blowing everywhere. And it was like minus 24 degrees. And he woke up, come and got me. And he had a whole plan. And we I remember driving to Walmart and not knowing what we were going to do, but he figured it out in that half an hour between getting in the car and getting our first donation and buying our first thing. And he really taught me because we went out in that storm and it felt amazing. You know, we weren't like doing massive change, you know, like it was just something small, but it was beautiful. And we still do it today. We just did our 9th one last month and he's 15 and he continues with it. And I think I got it from him, honestly, the innocence of a child. Between him and what happened with my father, I think that's where it comes from, honestly.
That's beautiful. And I don't think that there's any change too small. You know, it's if we all did our part, you know, we all make the world a better place in our own way. So that's beautiful that your son is your inspiration and
he is. Yeah. And I told him when we had finished that, I said, if you can go back to your class, you know, there's 400 students in your elementary school, and this was grade 1. And I said, if you can go back and tell them what you're doing, and if each child could pick one day of that year and do something, everybody in the city would be covered, you know? And it's true. It just takes one little idea. It doesn't have to be.
Yes.
I talk a lot. I'm warning your audience already.
Well, that's why you have a book right now. I'm just kidding. But the giving my heart room to breathe. So this is really, this is not just something you wrote overnight. This has been a journey in the writing, a journey in the living, and a journey in the breathing through the development of this book over the last, it's actually longer than 10 years now. It's It's
Yeah. So
17, is it?
16,
16,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it'll be 16 years that my father passed this Christmas.
Mhm.
Um, but it was the first year of his anniversary that I actually started writing the book as a journal.
Mhm.
And I would only write it at Christmas because, so I come from a Portuguese family, very traditional. And the way that most people celebrate Christmas Day is how we celebrate Christmas Eve.
Mhm.
Christmas Day to us, for some, it just kind of is part of Christmas Eve. Like we stay up the whole time. And my father actually was buried on Christmas Eve. So for us, Christmas had never been the same. So once, you know, the children, because we went from no children, and then my father passed away, to having 5, 6 children in our family.
Mhm.
So Christmas became all about the children, right? Which, thank goodness, right?
Mhm.
So it changed our perspective. But when the house became quiet and everybody went to bed, that's the first thing I would do was take out my notebook. And before my father had actually passed away, I vigorously would write down, I would interview him and write down. I still have the little pieces of paper, and I did it in pencil. I don't recommend that because 10 years later, when you're trying to read it, it's very hard.
Yeah.
But I remember just shorthand, you know, really fast, trying to get everything in there. But yeah, so I would do that every year. I would write for about 20 minutes and then I just couldn't do it and I'd put it away. And then a year later. So I had been writing it for almost 15 years,
Yeah.
but not, you know, not regularly. It wasn't until December of last year that I said, you know, I'm ready. My healing, I feel like I'm in a good place and I need to get this out. So it came out in May of this year. So I'm really proud of it, actually.
That's beautiful.
Thank
And
you.
journaling, I'm what do you, I mean, I think journaling is a valuable tool in any sense. But what are your thoughts on journaling and how it's transcended for you?
Before I went through this difficult time in my life, I never journaled. I just didn't know where else to turn. So it was something that was private that I didn't have to share with anybody. I wasn't ready to speak about what had happened. So I thought, let me just start writing. And then I couldn't stop. I don't tend to journal when things are okay, which is something I'm changing because now I'm doing gratitude journals and doing other things because I have come so far.
Mhm.
But honestly, in the beginning, I just did it to help through my pain. That's, you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's where we all tend to start when we feel like we don't have anywhere else to turn. And you know, and I'm very encouraging of people to, you know, I like to call it a brain dump at sometimes when people feel so overwhelmed by their thoughts. I'm like, just write it down, and it creates clarity within us in some shape or form. And in
Mm.
your form, it was, you know, a yearly journal or a yearly note to self of, I guess, how it's checking in with how you were coping and feeling at that time. And, you know, even though you didn't intend to share it, you ended up.
No, I didn't. I didn't. It was the last 3 chapters that I wrote after I had intended to share it.
Mhm.
Then I said, okay, I need to make this go somewhere. You know, it's not just about my story. But because, you know, it's great when you're sharing your story with people. You hope that something in that story is going to help someone. Um, but while you're writing it, it's just really for you. Like
Mhm.
I did it for me at first, and I did it for my dad, which I read to him. And it gave me a place to put all my anger and my sadness and everything, where I could do it quietly by myself, you know, because a big part of my issue was that I couldn't express the way that I was feeling.
Mhm.
And so the book was something that really helped me do that.
Let's introduce the listeners to your father. Tell us a little bit about him.
Oh my goodness. What do I say? He was complex, let me tell you. Um, you know, all the things, and I don't know if this is the same with most parents and children, but all the things that I used to be embarrassed about are the things I miss the most.
Mm.
You know, like he used to, so he was a musician, he was a carpenter as well, but what he loved was that he was a musician. And he would pull out his accordion and pull out his harmonica, play them at the same time while banging drums with his feet. And it would be like this big show. And I would be like rolling my eyes in the corner. I'd be like, oh my God, if I could just like, if the floor could open up and just swallow me whole. And he used to be part of like these little comedy skits and things.
Mhm.
And as a teenager, I was mortified because he played a role of a woman and he wore my clothes during this thing. I never wore those dresses again. He was hilarious. He'd be like the clown
Mhm.
in front of everybody, but behind closed doors, he was very lonely. He was very depressed. He had gotten hurt on the job and therefore couldn't work. And when that had happened, he had started drinking and he had started just becoming, his self-worth just plummeted. Coming from an immigrant family, a lot of the men feel as if they have to be the breadwinners. It's that old state of mind, right?
Yeah.
So even though my dad was young, but even having that old fashioned type of mentality when it came to work, he did all the cooking, he did all the laundry, he took care of all the kids more so than my mom. So it's kind of like, I don't know, he was a bit modern but a bit not modern. But he was
Yeah.
funny. He
Mhm.
was funny, but when he was serious, watch out, he was serious. It's just very extreme. And as an adult, I think I understand him more now because I think I'm a lot like him, where I have that extreme. And honestly, sometimes I feel guilty because if I had known now and grown to who I am today back then, before he had passed, I think I could have been able to help him. So that is my heaviness, that I
Mhm.
think I could have been able to see past, the anger sometimes we have toward our parents, or things like that. We had a complex relationship, but not one day would go by where he wouldn't call me just to say, hey, what's the weather doing up where you live? And I love you, like, every day, which
Wow.
was great. Even if we fought, or, and he was a small man, like I was towered over him. But yeah, I think one of the things I miss the most is his voice. I don't remember what he sounds like.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot there. And,
Mhm.
without having personally known your father, I do feel like, not just from reading the book, but by knowing you, that I do feel like I know him a little bit.
Yeah, I tried to throw in a couple of funny stories in the middle of all the chaos in the book. So,
Absolutely. And for if anything, it's a personality like your father and like yourself that, is so passionate. And it is all or nothing. It's happy,
yes,
musical, or it's sad and depressed. And it's real, at the end of the day. And I guess that's why he makes such beautiful music.
yes, he did. He did for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that that has continued in our family. My
Mhm.
son, I was pregnant when my father died, and I had just lost a pregnancy about a year before that. So my son was my second pregnancy. So I was very concerned through all the stress that maybe wouldn't have gone to term. But they say that sometimes, when a door closes, something opens. And I really do feel that my son is so much like my father. He's a musician, he's kind, he's like strong-willed, like the whole gamut. And I
Yeah.
really do feel that, he was my, person that kind of helped me through. So yeah.
I don't believe in coincidences, and reading through and learning that you became pregnant. He was your miracle throughout that time. And yeah, the crossover, I'm sure that there's a lot of your father's spirit very well alive in your son. There's
Thank you. Yes, I have a brother who's 4 years younger, and I had tried to get pregnant for 10 years. And the time that I least connected with my husband was when my father was sick. So
Mm.
I was shocked, and I would look at my husband and I'm like, now? Like, it made me angry. Like, why now? Like, I haven't even seen you. Like, when was the last time we got together? You know? And I remember it was about a week or two before my father died. and I was giving him the news, and my brother had just left the room and had the same news, and I didn't even know. Only my mother knew we were both coming with this beautiful news that we were, you know, and it was one thing that he really, really wanted to do was be a grandfather. So it was a hard day. I was glad that I told him, but I still, should I not have, right?
Yeah.
But definitely a blessing. And I do believe that my father helped me write my book. I never paused. I never rewrote any of the parts. It's just straight the way it is.
Mhm.
Even my editor, she just, grammar, it wasn't like, it was just raw, like the way that I had written it. Um, but my son, I don't know if I've ever talked about this before, but my son had a sleeping disorder for until just, a few years ago, where he just couldn't sleep. And quite often I would find him. My dad used to stay here when he was sick in one of the bedrooms, and it became my son's bedroom. And quite often I would find my son sitting up talking, walking over to the same corner where the bed used to be,
Mm.
and and would talk. And I had him, checked for epilepsy, and I had him do sleep tests and everything. And they recorded him. And I'm like, yes, that's what he does. And he wasn't even speaking in a language that anybody could understand, but he would have these 45-minute, 60-minute conversations. And so when they recorded it, it was very odd to see in that way, where he's just sitting in the dark and talking. And he did that for years. And I honestly just felt like that was my dad saying, hey, it's okay. And I
Mm.
just felt like this connection between the two of them. So I do feel that the two kids that were born at that time, came to help my brother and I, honestly.
Yeah,
I really believe that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Ria, one thing that I learned through all of this,
Yeah.
you know, life, everybody goes through things, we go through celebrations and we go through lots of different things, and people lose people every day,
Mm.
and yes, I miss my father tremendously. Um, but something happened to me when he died. So I could see all this, around life, we do our things, we go in and out of our daily schedule. But when he died, I had never seen anybody die in front of me before. And when he passed away, I kind of looked over to my mom. He wanted to die at home. And we had all our family was in the room. And I looked at my mom and I said, is that it? Because he wasn't moving. And sorry to be so graphic, but this is the problem with my thinking right at the time.
Mhm.
And my mom's like, yes, he's gone. And I said, well, what do you mean? Just like that? Like, it was so anticlimactic. I was expecting, like, I don't know if I was expecting this big noise or,
Mm.
something to drop, or like, I don't know. And I was just kind of like, well, we're rushing to work. It's all like anxiety and rushing and chaos. And, but in the end, no matter where you are, what you die from, any of those things, most people, it's peaceful. Most people, it's a second, like not even a second. And in that moment, I wasn't even sure what was going on, you know? And I stepped out of the room to take a breath and to go and see my best friend, and my brother was coming in the house. So I had to tell my brother. And all I could think of was, okay, I need to change my life. Like, that's the first thing that came to me. And I'm like, I don't want my life to end just like that. Like, I want there to be something that, you know, my mother could look back on and say, hey, she did this, or just something that impacts somebody, So I realized that day that my life wasn't about me anymore. Like, my life was honestly about interacting with other people. But then I got stuck and I couldn't do anything, you know? I couldn't. So I had all these things that I wanted to do in my mind, but I became so engulfed in helping my family. And like, I put on like a business hat and I was like, okay, I'm the one, because I'm the one who speaks English, my
Yeah.
brother's not going to do this stuff. I'm the one that needs to call the coroner. I'm the one that needs to call the doctor. I'm the one that needs to call all these things. So I just got rid of all my feelings in that minute. Where leading up to that, I was crying and I was feeling all these things. I couldn't do it. And I stayed like that for 12 years. And that's what the book is about. Don't do that. If you're going through grief, do not do what I did. Don't suppress your feelings, and that's my message, because it makes things so much worse. See, I talk a lot. I told you.
No, I think it's important, everything that you just shared, and I've experienced a lot of loss of people. Some people at my age still have never experienced loss of anyone close, and it doesn't get any easier. And how you deal with each is different. Each is unique, and in your situation, you did have to, summon the strength really to coordinate all the things that needed to be done. You distracted yourself with your duty, and you did what you had to do, except unfortunately it took you a while to come out of that.
Yes.
Go back to experiencing the sadness and grief and all of the things. So yeah, it's a massive lesson that thankfully
Don't recommend it.
You don't reckon? No, absolutely not.
I don't. But I couldn't get myself out of it, but eventually I had to come to the conclusion that, even if I've got all these people who love me around me, nobody's going to come and save me from myself. Like, I need to do it. It wasn't until I realized that things started to change and I could do the work. But I honestly, I think it wasn't until my son was about 9 that I finally exhaled, and I was like, okay, he was born. Yeah, my father died. All this stuff happened. I lost my job. I bought a new house, like all these things. And then it just kind of fell apart, but that's okay. I think that was a good thing. Like, sometimes we get gifts in the chaos and in the sadness, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate you reading the book.
Everything has to happen the way it's meant to happen, and this is the way it was meant to unfold for you. And I pray that you can let go of any regret or any remorse or any of that heaviness that I know, now know that you have been carrying a little bit with you. Is just, yeah, you had to go through this, and everything had to happen the way it was meant to, unfortunately, as as shitty as it was, really. But I opened up your book before our podcast today, and it was, I always find meaning when I open a page. Sometimes you just kind of open a page to a book and you're like, I'm meant to read this page.
Mm-hmm.
And
did it happen?
Well, I opened it, and it opens straight cleanly to chapter 19, which is experiencing loss. And if you don't mind, I'll read it, because I'm not sure whether this is. I'm just going to believe that I'm meant to read this. Experiencing loss. We must remember that every behavior or journey of loss is as individual as the person feeling it. Every behavior and grief response makes sense for the person that is feeling it. However, there are steps through grief that everyone feels. Grief is both an emotional thing as well as a mental thing. And I feel that's where I'm meant to end. How does
physical that? I should have added it physical too, because
you
just feel like the world is sitting on your shoulders, And I think the reason why I became stuck in the grief was not so much, I knew my father was sicker and sicker. I knew that inevitably this was going to happen. The part that I had a very, very difficult time with, to be honest with you, was leading all the way up to that day. Because, I saw him as a certain way. And these are the things that are still hard for me to talk about. The suffering, the needless pain that, he didn't deserve. The moments that I would find him crying in front of the mirror, and to me, he was always a strong person, even though he was tiny, right? Or bold. He was always like bigger than himself, this big persona. To find him doing that in hiding and not recognize himself. Those are the things that I can't seem to let go of completely. I'm almost there, But I think that is the reason why it was everything, every moment, every day, every memory leading up to that. And I do wish that I had known him a bit better before those days. It wasn't until he became really ill that I stopped doing the things that didn't matter anymore and really listened and, you know, was living more in the moment. And I had wished that, you know, like most of us do. And I don't blame myself for that. I don't feel, you know, guilty about that. That's just the way it was. And I probably would be the same way had I not gone through something that changed my mind about it, right? But yeah, it's a good reminder, I think. So now I try to do that with my mom. It's a good reminder to just, you know, turn the television off and leave the dishes after the big Christmas party and just sit down, you know, and hug her, or just sit and like tell stories or whatever it is, you know. Dishes will be there. I'll get my son to do them, you know, like it's just choosing what's important in your life, choosing what matters to you. And that could be something completely different for me than it is for you.
Yeah.
Right. But
yeah, presence, being in the moment, appreciation of those we love, you know, whilst we are together, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. And you were one of the, I guess, the inspiration for me interviewing my father a year ago. You know, because you were just like, just do it. Because I was like, I've been thinking about doing it. You're like, just do it, you know. And from your example of saying you'd wish that you had done that. And so I did, you know, I literally leapt on it and did that video
I was so
recording.
happy. I was so happy when I heard that you did, because I was like, yes, you know, that would be such a memory for you.
Yeah, and I
It
do.
doesn't matter what. No, it's okay. I was just going to say, you know, it was so important, all the things, and I haven't heard it yet, but I really want to. But I'm sure he said all these beautiful things that you wanted to hear, or, you know, and just be honest, and you learned some things about him, but just the memory of sitting there or standing there or wherever you were and doing the thing is in itself beautiful. Do you know what I mean? Regardless of what was spoken about, or, yeah, I'm
Yes,
so glad you did that.
me too. You know, I shared most of it because you know, there were a couple of stories and I was like, people don't need to hear that. But you know, I was so proud of him to just be like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, I'll do it. And he was just more than happy to share. And I fatigued him. I no doubt by the end of it, he was like, is that enough? And I'm like, that's plenty, thank you. And you know, now I'd love to do more. And now I really try to bank all of his stories and all of these, you know, because yeah, it's the memories that are going to stay with us long after, and the stories we'll share. And I'm so thankful that people actually appreciated hearing what my dad had to say as well. I had really good feedback about that
I can't wait. I'm so sorry. I apologize for not being able to listen to it yet, but I was so happy. You should have seen the smile when I heard you were doing that. It was awesome. So happy. Now you just got to do it for your mom too.
Yeah, I already told her. I'm like, you're next. She's like, oh, I'm not very good on, I don't, not very confident speaking and stuff like that. I was like, it doesn't matter. Like, we're gonna do one.
I
You know,
won't make anybody hear yours then.
exactly. But yeah, I wanted to touch upon the ukulele project, because obviously it's in your background for anyone that's watching the video. Tell us about the ukulele project.
Yeah. So one of the things, you know, two things that helped me after those 12 years, you know, how did things change, right? So two of the things that really helped me was the connection through music. So music for me is a celebratory thing. It's also the only thing that helped me express my feelings. I would cry a lot. I would listen to heavy metal and scream a lot because I do like metal. I like lots of different music. I play certain instruments, but I wasn't able to do that. So it was mostly just listening and writing. And I always, you know, with my son being involved in the giving and everything, and my father was a giver, so, and my mom. So I thought, you know, it's time to make that promise come true and do more than just live for me, right? So Ukulele Project was a small stepping stone to something I hope that becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. It was just an idea that we had. We ended up going to Guatemala. We raised the funds to get some ukuleles together. We flew down there, and I've always wanted to go to a third world country. Was a little bit afraid to do so. Went with someone that I know who's been there before, so it was a great opportunity to do it. And connected with them there. And I knew that I couldn't help with medical, they're in extreme poverty there, right? So I knew I couldn't help, with tons of money. I knew I couldn't start this big, this big movement. I knew that I couldn't, I wasn't a physician. I couldn't help them with medical care, but I knew mental health, and I knew how it felt to feel, although not like what they feel, because completely different world. And I would never pretend to know that lifestyle. But I knew how much it helped me. And I knew that it was the only thing that could give me joy, is the only thing that really connected me with my heart. And that's actually how I came up with the title of the book. I didn't know what to call the book. And I kept saying music gives my heart room to breathe. And my editor said, that's what you should call your book, is that your heart. You know what I mean? So that's how, anyways, on a side note, because music does that for me. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I could do that. So I said, let's help these children forget that they were hungry. Let's help them forget that they didn't really have a soft place to sleep. Let's just let them have fun and let them be children. And not everything needs to be this heavy thing that I have been carrying around with me. And it changed my life. It was amazing. So great. And they gave me so much more than I could ever give them. I have so many stories, but I won't go into them. But I have met so many wonderful people there, and we're getting together and doing some other projects that I'll be starting, and it'll be on my website. But I wanted to go back in July of last year, but COVID hit. It hit right when I came back. And then I got angry because I came home and the flights had all stopped 2 days later. And, I say this every time, but I remember how angry, and I hadn't been angry like that in a long time. And I remember being so angry when I got home and hearing people in Canada and the States and complaining that they had to stay home and they couldn't go to work. And I'm like, man, I just came from this place where these kids had dengue fever and now they have COVID. They're already starving. And here we are comfortable in our homes. We might get a week or two off because nobody knew what COVID was going to be, right, in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I felt like everybody was so ungrateful. It really bothered me a lot. Mm-hmm. So it took me a little while to kind of get over that, to be honest with you. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I preach now is everybody needs to go somewhere outside of their comfort zone, even if it's take a vacation. Like, these places are beautiful. Like Guatemala is so gorgeous, the scenery, the people, everything. Mm-hmm. Go on a week vacation, but take a couple of those days and help out. Like, it doesn't take a lot, to make this huge difference. Yeah. And in those countries, the smallest thing can make a huge impact. Like, you can feed a family of 10 for a week for $60, yeah, skip your pizza. And, it doesn't mean you have to give the clothes off your back and you have to, go into the nunnery and you got to do all these things, yeah. But something, teach your children, to, I don't know. So the Ukulele Project, yes, I want to go back. I wanted to go back in October right now, but sadly, they're one of the last countries to even get their first vaccines. So, yeah. So the poor countries are countries that are usually last. So I'm hoping to go in March. And I have 10 guests that have been on my podcast that are waiting to come with me. So I am so happy. So I'm like, absolutely, come with me. Bring ukuleles. We'll go down there, And one person wants to build a garden, and the other person wants to help the company that's down there, which is Fundamaya, to do, taxes, and somebody else wants to do this, and somebody else, and I'm like, yeah, come down,
Mhm.
and it's not because I created this big thing, it's just music,
Yeah.
it's just one idea, right?
Mhm.
But sorry, I could go on and on about Guatemala. I have so many beautiful stories. Like it was just, yeah, changed my life, honestly.
Absolutely. And you're doing your part to help change theirs. And it's not just music and it's not just the little movement. It means a lot to them and it means a lot to you and these guests that are going to be able to come with you and make their impact and sustainability and teaching their skills. We all have skills and we all have that, innate desire to give and to share and to help other people, uh, despite all the stresses in the world. So yeah, I think it's a beautiful project, and I'm glad to have contributed in some way to that project as well.
Thank you so
You
much.
let me choose a color of the ukulele.
I know. Thank you so much for all your support. And, at that time, it just felt like the right project. I felt my father with me the whole time.
Mhm.
And I talk about that in the book. And it was just so bonding, like for all of us. And it was so beautiful. We didn't speak Spanish, and we actually learned a song. It was Hola Guatemala, and it was very catchy, but it was just welcoming Guatemalan with Canadians. And so we had created this song and kind of learned it on Duolingo, the translation. But but it's just, yeah, but so many other things have come out of that, being able to give a family a fridge so that they can now open their own business through COVID and survive. Like little things have led to bigger and bigger things, which is, it's so beautiful. I remember being on the plane and I just bawled. I was in Dallas. So I'm in Toronto, and I went from Toronto to Dallas and then Dallas to Guatemala City. And my husband's like, "Are you okay?" Because I hate flying, hate it. So my husband's like, "Are you okay? Like, it's okay. We only have one more transfer, And I'd
Mhm.
be like, I'm like, "Don't talk to me. I need to write my book." So I got my little journal out, right? And started writing. And then I read it back and it just says, "Here I am on the tarmac. I can't believe this is finally coming true." And I was just overwhelmed with, oh my God, I'm going to be there soon. I'm going to be there soon. And it was just amazing. I cannot wait to go back. Cannot wait.
Amazing. It,
Sorry, I'm
it
just passionate about Guatemala now.
See, passion, but it's good. I think that everybody should experience going to places where, we take for granted what we have, and it's important to open your eyes to how happy people can be with so little. It's,
Oh, there's no bullying there from what and I spoke with some of the locals, and what they kept telling me is, we appreciate, that you're helping us with food, and we appreciate all these things, but more than money, we want you guys to come and teach us skills.
mm,
If you're able to buy sewing machine, bring that and help us, make these. It's like all educational. If you're able to teach a business course, go down and just help them learn how to open a business. Like most of them, not a business, a bank account. Most of them don't even have a bank account, right?
yes,
And it's very different there. Like, just to give you one quick example, this one family is that I know is behind on their electricity, for example, and electricity is $14 US a month. Because they're behind on that, and their taxes, they're not allowed in the cemetery. So they have a couple of people in their family who are ill, and they are deathly afraid that when their time comes and they will pass on, that they will not know what to do because they don't have access. So if you're behind on any of your taxes or anything, you're kind of stuck. That frightens me. Or you're a single mom of 8 children and you have diabetes and you don't have $20 to go and get medication, the doctor's visit, and the ride, 3-hour ride to the hospital for $20.
yeah.
And that is scary to me. And the kids work, so they're like 10 years old. They work for half the day and then they go to school and then they come home and they work again, but they're all happy children.
Mm-hmm.
They're happy, they're laughing, there's no They're just like, it's just beautiful, it's just just what they know, so an outsider coming in, don't assume what people want. If you're going to go and help out, ask them what they need, because you have no idea. And the last thing you want to do is go to a place that you know nothing about, and the culture and everything, and kind of take over, like go with good intentions, but be open to finding out what it is that they need, because that's the best way you can help. I did music, but there are other things that I want to do there, but something maybe perhaps more impactful. But for me at that time, it was great. Loved it.
Music is a skill, a gift that you have the same as your father. And music just fills the soul. Like, I have come from a strong musical background as well. And music definitely speaks to me very, very, I don't know. Yes, it's a language of love. Let's just call it that. It just came to me just now. But
that's something I didn't know about you. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. Well, if you know Filipinos, they're all about music. They sing, dance, love it, live it, breathe it, karaoke every house, play instruments. And I think that's one of my favorite memories is, sitting in some areas where my mum is from and my family's from, that are, we would call them poor, because they don't have simple necessities that we again take for granted. But we, at nighttime, under the low lights of the lamps and fires, my uncles and cousins would sit around with guitars, and we would play music and sing, and it was beautiful. Those are some of my favorite moments of being with my family, is just sitting around with acoustic guitars and trying to learn how to play as well myself, and sing. And because I could sing, like it was always like, come sing, do this. And and it's being able to bring an experience to people. I really appreciate being able to share that gift.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And those are some of the things that I used to be like embarrassed of as a young lady, like 12, 13. But now our home is so quiet. Without, not my home, but our extended family home, because he was of the whole band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just different. Yeah, it's just different.
Yeah.
But
you play instruments as well, you said.
A little bit of a lot of different things, but nothing, not great at anything. But yeah.
All right, Nelia. Well, I wanted to ask you a question I ask everybody who's been on the show, and that is, what does summoning your superhuman mean to you?
Okay. So I don't know if this answers that question exactly, but you let me know. Okay, if this is what you're looking for. So most of my life, I wear my heart on my sleeve, right? And I was ridiculed for it for a long time growing up. And now I think that that's my superpower. And it took me a long time to realize that. And now I'm like, well, I'm not defining myself by all the other things that people think that I am. I now know who I am and what I want. And nothing feels better to me than that. It took me a long time. I'll be 50 next year. It took me a long time to get there. But I think, the journey comes when it's ready. Like, all these things are leading up to it, right? But now it's the thing that I celebrate the most, and I don't hide anymore, is my heart. So I think that that's my power. I don't know if that answers your question, but
definitely answers.
Yeah, but I think that's it, because that's what makes me feel. Doing the opposite of what I did those 12 years is what makes me happy. Not keeping it in. The minute when we do meet, because I feel like we're going to meet one day in person, if you ever see me kind of like looking down and quiet, it's because I'm holding in my emotions, and that's when I'm my saddest. So when I am like this, like today, and I'm talking, it's because you can tell I cannot hide my feelings.
Yeah.
I cannot. I'd be a terrible poker player. Like I just can't do it. I don't. I dislike like people who aren't genuine, or people who are fake. I don't think anything bad of them. I don't think anything, I just can't relate with them. I don't think anything negative, except that I choose not to necessarily have those people in my life, because I feel like life is so short, like what you were saying before, take the time to do it now and live in the moment. And people say that all the time, and put your mask on first before, like all these things. But I was always, when I heard that, I was like, yeah, I know life is short. I brush it off, and it wasn't until all this stuff happened, and honestly, until my father died, that like I said, it just changed everything. I thought I knew all this stuff. I was 33, thought I had the world in my palm of my hand, and everything was like tested at that point. And it wasn't until then that I realized how short it really is when you're standing over someone. And it's so like, I don't know, the best word I use is the anticlimactic moment. I was like, okay, so I'm not even sure if this is what happened just now. Like, is what's going on? It just, yeah, for me, it redefined everything else. I didn't pay attention to the little petty things anymore. I stopped arguing with people about the silliest things. I don't do things that I don't like anymore. And I don't feel like I have to explain myself of why I don't want to do those things,
Yes, I do know. And
that's why I started the podcast.
Yeah. Yes,
because if you don't, I wasn't looking after myself. I became diagnosed with PTSD because of all the trauma of the leading up to and holding everything in. I used to have nightmares that my father was buried alive for years, and I couldn't deal with life. Anxious, depressed, and I was a new mom, and I was waiting to have a baby for 10 years, and I was depressed. And I was like, this is not how this should be, what's going on? And I learned, no, I need to take care of myself. Nobody's going to come and save me. This is what I need to do. And I started on this journey. And that's what the podcast is about, how you need to take care of yourself before you can go and take care of other people. It's like the Guatemalan family. If you can go and help one person, then the village is better, the whole family unit. You help one mom or one child, or, like I know through my work, we sponsored a child there, and that child is now going to school. And then if that child remains in school, the next generation is going to be completely impacted. So, one person can definitely make a difference. Like, I don't know of anything more contagious than kindness and all those things, but we forget about ourselves, and that's why I really love our episode that we did on the show, and people should go listen to that because it was beautiful. Like, love it. But,
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nelia, for everything you've shared. I mean, that there hasn't been a response to that question quite like yours. And what I love about it, I guess, obviously, because I feel like I resonate with a lot of what you just said, because trying to protect ourselves from being hurt when you do wear your heart on your sleeve. And I think that's probably why you and I just connect on so many different levels. Is because we we laugh, we cry, like, if you're watching the video, you've probably seen us both go through emotions, and we don't hide it very well. Like, at least you're getting the real us. This is us, and we're sharing our truth. And thank you for sharing your truth with us today. It's so valuable, the impact that you're making, and please never belittle your movements. You've got this coloring book now that you've created.
I do. I'm so excited.
You're all about self-care, and so am I. Like, it's about self-care, self-love, because as I tell people, it's like you need to show up for people with an overflowing cup, with a full cup first. And that's a good place to give from.
Yes, and you do that so well. Like, I'm learning from you all the time. You really do that so well. But I'm trying to create all the things that I think would have helped me that nobody really came to me with, because I think it will help other people, and that's just, when you go through something, no matter what it is, a divorce, loss of job, health, anything. It doesn't have to be that you've lost somebody in your life. When you get through that, all you want to do is shout from the rooftops and say, hey, it's okay. This is not going to be forever. it may be 12 years, but there's an end to it, and you want to help other people get to that, because you know what it feels like before, during, and after. And I always say my life is in two parts, completely two different people, based on our experiences. So yeah.
Yeah.
I remember. I'm so proud of you that you have your podcast. Like, I remember telling you, we were talking before it started, and I'm like, look, Ria, you only need two things: a microphone and a box of tissues. Okay. Because me, that's all you need. I think I cried for like, I don't know how many episodes. I was in tears, especially in the early days. But that's all you need. You just need a genuine conversation, and that's what matters.
That's why we do what we do. And you inspired me. You gave me the strength to just do it.
Oh, wow. That what a compliment.
Truly, like, I'm so thankful for yourself, and there obviously been a few other people that kind of helped give me that friendly nudge to just be like, Ria, this is what you're doing is bigger than you, and just do it, because people will say
you're much better at it than I am. Like, you're so much
come on. You've been doing it longer than me. But anyway, I know you and I can talk all day. We really could. I am going to put all of the ways that you can connect and learn more about Nelia in the show notes. Please connect with her. Please have a listen to her podcast. Our episode was a fabulous one. It's my biased opinion. Now, but they're all great.
No, it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
And I also have another copy of your book that I want to give away to a listener. And Yay. All I ask in return, is and obviously I've only got one book, so I will give it to the person who shares with me what they took from this conversation. What is the golden nugget that you took from our conversation today? Share it with me. I'm going to share it with Nelia, and then together we're going to decide who gets the book that I have.
Fun.
So, and I'll only know that you've listened to this episode if you submit your response. So,
great.
So this
I love it.
Be fun. My first giveaway on the Summon Your Superhuman podcast. But I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, all the way here from Australia, for being here today and sharing and being so vulnerable with us. And you've shared a lot. I know that there are going to be people taking some strength from you, as I have, and as you continue to give. So thank you so much for what you bring to the world, Nelia.
Thank you. I feel like I was a little bit all over the place, but I just love talking to you, and I'm so passionate about Guatemala. Once you hit Guatemala, I was just like all over the place. But yeah, if anybody's like, I just want to end with this. If anybody is listening to your show or my show or anybody's show, or whatever, even if you're not the person who's going through the topic that we're talking about, be the person that notices the people around you that might be going through something. Quite often, like both of us will talk about, people's traumas and things and challenges. And sometimes, people think, oh, it's not going to resonate with me when I see the topic name, but don't kid yourself. Like, if you're talking about nutrition or whatever it is the topic is, and somebody's like, well, yeah, that might not be for me, you don't know, because somewhere in that conversation is going to be something. If it doesn't help you, it will definitely help somebody that may be hurting. And just be open and look around you. Sometimes I think we just have these blinders on, and I think if we can help people be less lonely, that would be amazing. Because I had a lot of people around me who loved me, who kept asking about me, and I just wasn't present enough to realize they were there. And it was a very lonely time for me, so that is one of the things that I feel very strongly about. So just reach out to people around you, even if they seem like they're doing okay. Just ask them, just be observant. That's all that I ask people to do.
Care and compassion. Just for people we care about. You're amazing. Thank you so much.
You're amazing. I love it.
All right. Well, thank you so much
for having me on.
Thank you.